What's your key takeaway in terms of additional details or the lack thereof when it comes to Trump's speech?
Well, I think that's the lack thereof is the key word here. He didn't really say much about the Middle East. He said a little bit about immigration, where he kind of just restated his position. When it comes to the Middle East, there were three things he mentioned. It's ISIS, he now calls it, instead of ISIL, as the Obama administration used to say. There was half a sentence on Iran and half a sentence on Israel. So i.e. really nothing new. So this was very much a domestic policy speech. It was aimed obviously at a domestic audience, but he wasn't stating any new policy. He just said we're unbreakable bond with Israel, and by the way, I've put in place new sanctions against Iran. That's the extent of it. ISIS, there was a little bit of nuance. He mentioned Muslims being hurt by ISIS as well. But that's really the extent of it.
So you wouldn't go as far as saying that there is a withdrawal in the fiery rhetoric that we had in the past from Trump on foreign policy, on Iran, on IS, that this was just because it's a domestic policy speech, right. The other stuff got sort of backtracked.
It's hard to tell, right? I mean, you could say there was a withdrawal. He didn't mention much about it, but maybe that's because for him the audience here was a domestic audience. It wasn't the Middle Eastern audience. It wasn't a foreign policy speech as such. So, he just reiterated his positions in very basic, simple terms without saying, here's what we're going to do, here's something new that we're going to do. Again, on ISIS, to be fair, there was a little bit of nuance by mentioning that ISIS is hurting Muslims as well as Christians.
Glenn, picking up on what Riad has just said, I mean, President Trump's speech was very much focused domestically, right. Given all of the issues that President Trump already faced as immigration issues, right. Tax, infrastructure spending. Right. Will these issues overshadow President Trump's diplomacy and also his relations with Asia?
Well, I think it is a domestic speech mainly, and he needs to do this. And I think he came off well in the sense of showing himself as a presidential person. He's off the campaign trail. He's now finally in office, and he's sounding more like a president, and he's reaching out for, cooperation across the aisle. And, so we see, in a sense, a different person there who, in that sense, I think a lot of people are relieved that they were expecting him to be more combative in the
market seems pretty relieved right now.
Exactly. So the tone, I give him good marks, because I think but as to what's been said about the detail, people are expecting more clarity about what he's actually going to propose. And he's now in a dance with the Republicans in the Congress. He wants to show leadership, but he wants to push the burden onto the Congress to come up with a consensual plan in many of these areas. So he's in a sense playing a little game here. So he's saying, I could be presidential, I'm going to be leader, but you've got to come up with the details.
Have you gotten any sense of how he's going to deal with China or the rest of the world from this speech?
Well, again, nothing very specific. He only mentioned China once with regard to WTO in 2001.
Although we did hear of Wilbur Ross talking about China.
That's right. That's right. Wilbur Ross coming in today. He's a key guy for the administration and for the policy, and he knows China very well. And we'll see. That'll have to be played out. But he didn't even talk much about NAFTA and Mexico and any. So clearly the trade issue has to unfold here, and they have to come up with, why is bilateral better than multilateral trade? What is their, how this border-adjusted tax. There are big questions that have been left unanswered, and he's, in a sense, thrown the ball back to the Congress, to his colleagues on the Republican side, to say, you guys have to sort this out. It's unclear whether he's going to be the referee, he's going to push aggressively from the White House to get the deal he wants, or is he not sure what he wants? I mean, that's unclear out of this. But I would say, from a tone standpoint, he's done himself well. And from Asia,
Glenn, here's
Here's
the issue. So the market was waiting for details in this speech. The details were not provided pretty much across the board. What's the next milestone event that we need to look forward to, what we needed to watch out for, that's going to give us that detail, that reality as to whether this stuff is going to go forward or not?
Well, I think it's going to be playing out over the next 2-3 months. On the Congress, in terms of the various committees that are coming forward with, papers and policies on Obamacare, on the military, on the infrastructure deal, on the whole immigration, the replacement of the a travel ban, and sort of these are still to be sorted out. This is a new administration. They have mostly people that don't know Washington, that haven't been in the trenches before. Their own relationship with the legislative side is quite still to be developed, and I think that the key people are still not even in place who are giving intellectual shape to this.
And Glenn, of course, we are looking forward to China's National People's Congress.
Indeed.
How skeptical are you about the potential of a trade war breaking out and just derailing China's growth expectations?
I think what we see in this, in a sense, the reassurance, if you just take the NATO piece, they said, oh, before NATO is obsolete. Well, now he's saying NATO's important and we're part, So the Europeans are certainly reassured. I think in a similar way, his style is create doubt, draw people off the back foot, and then come through with something that reassures. I think what we see in this speech is Trump reassuring after Trump running for office, creating lots of doubt, and that just his natural bearing and his strategy is to be aggressive, push people off balance, and then come through with something that resolves the matter. Like he said, yeah, one China, sure, we're all for one China after raising doubts about it.
I know.
So
yeah.
I think he's that way. Not that he's, just bluffing, but his style is to say, look, you assume this, don't assume anything. I'm coming in new. And it puts people off. But then it also say, you can work with me. We'll find something. That's the tone I get. I don't see anything more particular.
It seems to be
with regard to
sort
China.
of a negotiating tactic.